Vegas has my heart, man.
It means the world to me. It's my home.
It's everything. It really is.
Las Vegas just has so much opportunity.
This is home. Las Vegas is home, man.
It is a land of opportunity.
Las Vegas has been my home for 20 years now.
You can have a crazy idea in the morning, and by mid-afternoon, you have a bunch of people on your side helping get it done.
Las Vegas is home. Las Vegas is home.
All right, guys, we're doing this episode number 24. I'm here with Berylynn Holdmann.
Hello.
How's it going?
Well, how are you?
She is the lead officiant for the Love Bandits Elopement Co. and the founder of Desert Nomad Hat Co. and Mercantile.
To be determined.
I had to throw that on there because, as we talked beforehand, we don't want to box yourself in to just hats.
True.
I also do want to note that this is the latest I've ever recorded episode, so let's see how it goes. What time? It's like 6:30 right now.
We're doing great.
Yeah, I mean, first, thank you for coming over, especially after a work day. So it means a lot to me.
Of course, thank you for having me.
I'm excited. If you guys haven't watched the news recently, especially if you're awake in the morning, Berlynn had a news segment about Love Bandits Elopement Co. And it caused me to reach out to her because I know she's doing a few different things and it's very unique.
Yeah, and that all kind of stemmed from the fact that I started. Do you want me to go ahead and tell you all about it?
Yeah, go ahead. Hold on. First, let's tell us about yourself. Give us like a 2 to 3 minute description of who Berlynn is.
Of who Berlynn is. All right. Well, I was born and raised in Las Vegas, 27 years old as of a couple weeks ago. So definitely had a couple of different segues in my life that led me to where I am now. And I've chosen a lot of...
Fix this a little bit. There you go. You're good.
That led me to where I am now. I started out when I went to University of Las Vegas in 2011, and I was part of Sigma Kappa, the sorority that was there. So with that, I took on a couple of roles in the event planning coordination with doing social chair gatherings, philanthropy events, all of that. And that really encouraged and pushed my boundaries into going to the event company way. Which then eventually led me into doing weddings and going and hosting other events and doing event coordination for the company that I'm at now. So that was kind of my journey as of that. Outside of the event world and what I do on a normal day of marrying people, I do have a few hobbies that are more, unique than some people might do because I have my motorcycle riding and rock climbing and all of my outdoor adventures, kayaking, backpacking. So I definitely think everything works out really well with the fact that I have this professional persona about me. And then on the outskirts of it, if you look at everything that's on my personal life, you would never know the two of those coincide whatsoever, which is, I think, a beautiful thing that you can hold both things and really kind of have not necessarily two different lives, but it allows you to have a professional life and then also have this kind of alter ego of sorts with all of your own activities and hobbies.
You are living an official double life. I have to say.
I am.
Do those two personas ever conflict, or do you ever forget that the social media Berlynn is kind of finding itself into the real world, or vice versa?
I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think that it's really important to convey yourself. I think so often we have this persona where when we put ourselves online, it's kind of this glorified version of ourselves, like they always say. They're like, oh, well, it's portrayed completely differently than it is in real life. And I think being very authentic with how you decide to put yourself out there is really important. And I don't think it's hard to you can separate the two while also remaining authentic in both of them. The company that I have with Love Bandits Elopement Co. and Lady Love Bandit as myself, I've learned that the important thing is finding how to brand yourself in that specific way and really capturing that and running full fucking force with it. Because if you don't, then you're just masking who you are. And I think the most appealing thing in whatever realm that is, especially with the wedding industry, being an officiant, the couples that come towards me aren't the ones that are saying, oh, I want diamonds and pearls and all of these things at my big ritzy, fun, fabulous wedding that has 500 people with a big ass cookie cake and a 5-tier wedding cake for everyone to have. The couples that are attracted to me as myself and my elopement collective, where we work together as a team with a videographer and a photographer, they come to us because they know exactly what they're getting at that time. And again, I think it's really important to make sure that they know that, like, I might show up to your wedding in a cheetah skirt and a leather and a leather jacket. So like, they're not startled when it's a super conservative Catholic family and they're like, what the shit is this girl doing at our wedding? So again, like, really branding myself to make sure that that is how I'm conveyed online. So I don't think it's hard to do that. I definitely have this like outdoorsy nature about me in my personal life and like my traveling. And that's where the Desert Nomad name came from, is because of this like nomadic spirit that I have. But then I also have Love Bandits Co, which is just like badass rock and elopement company. But on both tokens of that, like, it's very easy to differentiate and like, but also understand that they are compatible with one another.
I 100% see that. I could see there's a bunch of reflections on both sides just going through your Instagram as well. And we'd said before that your face doesn't show at all on Instagram. So
It's like the ever going mystery. Everyone's like, why are you just this mysterious woman who never has her face in anything? And then I go, well, the stuff that I see is way more exciting than my face. All of you have seen that before. It's everywhere.
It has your IG has like this exuberant flow to it, where it's just like, because it is called at a Desert Nomad. There's the cliffhanger. So cat's out of the bag on who this is. But yeah,
now you all know.
You see this, like, it's this artistic touch of mostly the desert, and you see small reflections of your motorcycling and your backpacking and this adventure. And one thing I noticed is, like, when you zoom out of it, it's almost like it's telling a story, and not just one picture. It's like everything kind of builds within itself. Yeah.
And I think it's like a direct reflection of who I am as a person. Like, it's very cohesive, very fluid. It all goes together. Which I think it's also important to capture like what that style is about your personality and really let that reflect in not only your business endeavors, but also in your personal life. And like, that's something that I've really fallen in love with, is finding a way to express that in all of those avenues, which is really hard for people to figure out in the very beginning. You know, people are like, how do I reflect myself? How do I do this? But I do like telling a story with everything that I have. And I think that's even more important to me, is for when people look at my content in whatever realm that might be, there doesn't have to be words with it, but it's insights, like this inquisitive nature. When people see it and they're like, what are you doing? How are you doing this? And then it becomes a component of conversation and a catalyst for really getting to know someone more, where like it's like this one picture of a mountain or you doing something else. Everyone's like, that's really cool. Where was that? And like, why do you enjoy doing these things? You know? And like you with festivals, it's the same thing. Like, I see that and I see a picture and I want to know more about that night. You know, I'm like, Jake, what happened that night? How do you tell me more?
Yeah, my IG has no aesthetic at all. It's just like, right now, it's just like a bulk of podcasting pictures. If you go back a year ago, then it's just like a bulk of partying pictures. There's no aesthetic. I'm still trying.
I like your aesthetic. I think it's great.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So earlier you were saying that Sigma Kappa and event planning was kind of an inspiration to get into the event planning side. Is there, looking back, is there an inspiration to becoming a nomad or this sort of creative life?
I do. I think in the very beginning, I always had this desire, you know, especially in our parents' generation, as we grow up, we really have this instilled in us where they're like, you know, get this 9 to 5, go to college, get the 9 to 5, have something with benefits and a really banging 401k. And you're like, all right, cool. And health insurance. And then you think about it and you're like, the health insurance is a cool thing that you don't have to pay for. Benefits are awesome. And I think this just instill, like, it's a very westernized and Americanized thing to grow up assuming that is the case. And I think with our generation, we've really, you know, with social media and the internet, we've been exposed to so many different things of like having a nomadic life. Like, nobody knew about living in a van. Our parents didn't know about, like, it existed, but it wasn't put in front of people to constantly see and inspire them to step out of the box and, explore other things and other cultures and travel, because that's not something, unless you went into like an Encyclopedia Britannica or an atlas, you're like, I have no idea what the Great Wall of China looks like back in the day, but now you can just like go look at a hashtag and it's there and you can see all of the things and like vicariously live through all of these other people. And so I think for me, like growing up, for all of us, I would actually think is something like that our parents, inspired us to do these things. But I knew as I got older that I just didn't, I wanted structure, but like we were talking about earlier, like the rigidity of it also becomes monotonous. And I think that is something that can also make people become really complacent. And so I knew in my heart that I never wanted that. And I also knew that I needed to make things with my hands. Like I've always been a very crafty person. And so in my mind, like, how do I convert that over to what I do every single day? And even if I have a normal 9-to-5 job, like what else can I be doing to ensure that I am satisfied at the end of the day with that? So, I had gone through so many different jobs. I worked in the service industry, which so many of us in Vegas do. Worked at one point, I wanted to be a truck driver. So like, I know, which I guess is the most nomadic of jobs that you could possibly have is like, hey, I am a truck driver and like I drive for a living, which I decided that I didn't want. I think I was driving down the highway one day as a little girl and I saw a chick driving a semi and I had this revelation. I'm like, whoa, girls can do that too. Like all of these societal norms that we conform to with gender. I'm like, a girl can drive a semi. So like, sorry, going back to that. With that being said, like I knew that I wanted to make things. So that really inspired me. And how I initially got into hat making, like this is aside from the event stuff that I was doing too. But, I was teaching for a little bit. I was substitute teaching full time. And that was originally what I was pursuing. I wanted to go into secondary education and my heart was set on it. But then I took a step back and said, I still need that creative outlet. And that's what I want to do is pursue that full time. So I did a little bit of research. I ran and stumbled into this guy, Nick Fouquet, when I was on Abbott Kinney, because I can't afford anything on that street anyways. I'm just walking up and down and drinking my $900 latte. And I'm like, wow, I really wish I could afford anything here. So I stumbled into this hat store and started doing some research on the guy. And everyone that's a hat maker now, I mean, it's a dying trade. And that's another thing too that I really wanted to hop in and pick up something that necessarily wasn't a skill that so many people have now that was super unique, so that whatever I was creating and producing, it was a tangible thing that they could really hang on to forever. And it was an authentic piece that was completely handmade. So I stumbled into him, did some research, and realized that all of these people that had pursued this creative outlet had started apprenticing somewhere. So I further dug into that, and 2 years ago, I started apprenticing here at a hat shop, and he's one of the only people in the entire world that has the equipment that he has, so which made it very unique to making that product itself. And I think it's been a long journey, but I transitioned out of that incredibly structured lifestyle to say, hey, I'm going to risk this and kind of jump headfirst into the fire and see how it goes. And so I started apprenticing, making absolute garbage money. And in my mind, it was worth it because of learning the skill that so many people don't have. So like the creative going into that, like I was inspired, or early on, I was inspired by other people that I saw pursuing their creative outlets. And I think that's another thing too, is so often we're taught that, get these specific stable jobs that allow you all this. And it was never like entrepreneurship was never something that was thrown into the generation before our faces. And now we have so much inspiration around us to also do that same thing for ourselves, that really everything is tangible and realistic if you set your mind to it. And we have so much information that allows us to do that. So after the teaching, that's when I decided, I was like, I have to do this forever. And then the event planning led into the other avenue of my life. So
well, once you step outside of that comfortable bubble, you realize that the world is like giant. It's a giant social construction that the generations before it just kind of instill and to keep them in power more so than anything else.
Yeah.
But our generation, like you said, it was the first ones to kind of realize the grandiose of entrepreneurship and the different things that you can do with your life. And now I think more so I see a lot of us were kind of going the opposite of what our parents do. Like a lot of our generation's really big into minimalism, but but I know the majority of people, you go to your parents' house and they're just like,
You have a lot of shit.
there's antiques everywhere. There's like so much shit in the backyard, and you're just like, oh my God, this is giving me anxiety just being here.
And I'm like, you don't have to hang things on every wall. You are perfectly fine. You can live with like one bare wall. You're gonna be okay.
Yeah. And we're just like, all right, there's about 3 pictures in my apartment. I think that's set for now because could be out of here in 6 months.
Yeah. Well, and I think like that's even shifted to how we think about, our experience with even living. And so often like you said, with our parents, they always had something going on. They had this structure, they had this life. And I think people are even starting to realize that like, it's okay to not constantly be doing something too, and like have a standstill in your life and breathe for a little bit. And I get that even involves just things that you have in your life that so often, we're consumers by nature. So like bringing that into the structure and saying, oh, I just need to consume this, have this. And taking a step back and realizing that we don't always need that.
Yeah, the gap year in college is becoming more and more popular, where you take a year off from graduating high school before going to college. But if you look back then,
that was not.
It was like you're either going into college or
you're never going at all.
Like,
was it.
Or you're never going. You're a failure, and you're going to be homeless in 5 years.
Yeah.
They're like, you have to do this. But now everyone's like, yeah, we're going to take a year off, going to go travel, or maybe explore this this business that maybe I want to do, or who knows what could possibly happen.
Yeah. Well, and so often in the beginning, you went to college and they said, well, choose a major, do what you have to do. And you have no idea what you want to go into anyways. So now you're just kind of idle and trying to figure it out, as opposed to taking a break for a second and really honing into something that you love and then pursuing that. Because so often I think people pursue something that they don't necessarily want to, or wasn't their intended, out of pressure, they just chose that. So that, I think that's a great idea. Like take a year off, really take 5 years off. Who cares? I'm still going to school, 25 years later. So.
No, it's never too late. I took almost 6 years in college. So.
Oh God, baby, I'm still there. And I always encourage people, and like that's where you really get to dig deeper and like find what inspires you, and you don't feel rushed into making a decision. And again, even with the hat stuff and the creative things, like had I known that this is something that I wanted to pursue in the beginning, like maybe I would have taken an alternative route. And in the beginning, I was like, I would never take business as a major. And I don't know, for some reason in my mind, I was like, I would never do that. I'm above that, which is so ridiculous that I would ever think that, because it probably would have been the most constructive thing. But instead I went into like political science and then teaching. And then I said, fuck it, and went into film that I'm still doing now. And like, I'm never going to do a single goddamn thing with film. So that makes no sense at all. So I think it's like taking that time to really like leverage that time and dig deeper into yourself to find out what you want to do is also crucial in the exploration of like our identity and our brand and what we want. So you don't find out 25 years later about something that you could have been really honing into for so long.
Yeah, our generation's really big on going down multiple avenues at one time. and even if we know that they're dead ends, then we're completely okay, because we're more so looking at it like at the end of the day, you're going to regret the things that you didn't do rather than things that you did. And the generations before, it's like, I'm going down this one road and never looking back, regardless of what the fuck's down there.
I'll be miserable for the next 38 years of my life, but I really don't care. As opposed to us, we're like, okay, well, we'll experience it. And then, hey, if we really don't like it, then we can turn the horse around at any time and go back the opposite direction, which so oftentimes that wasn't. And I feel like a lot of people too, they don't have the option for that, or they didn't have to before. They're like, you want to get married and have kids and have a family, and that is the life that you exist in. And no one knew that. I mean, even people our own age now, marriage isn't something, which is hilarious because I marry people for a living. So I'm like, no one wants to get married anymore, but they absolutely do because I'm marrying them. So that's a thing. But, it transitions over to that too, where a lot of people our age aren't wanting to have this traditional life where you're a housewife and the man brings home the bacon and does all the things, get married, have 14 kids, live in a house with a white picket fence. So I really think we've like progressed out of that too, to hold on to what we think is important. And it's so funny when you tell people, like, if you say, I don't want to get married, they're like, but why? You're like, because I don't want to. Like, I don't think I need to have an explanation for why I don't want to do the things we've been doing for years, hundreds of years. That maybe it's okay to like break out of the barriers of that and not conform to all of these things.
They're like, oh, you don't want to love somebody one day?
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the stamp that they put on it.
And it's so funny too. Like I've talked about it with my mom a million times because she goes, don't you think it's ironic and hypocritical that again, you marry people and you don't believe in marriage? And I'm like, I wouldn't say hypocritical. I do think it's ironic. Absolutely. But I'm like, I think love is a really beautiful thing, and however people want to express that, and if that means signing a piece of paper to commit yourself to someone for tax benefits for the rest of your life, that's fine. But I think there's just like the spiritual thing that comes along with it, where being a part of that ceremony with someone is a super like goosebump worthy experience. That even if we don't necessarily agree on like the logistical part of it, government wise, and like the legal aspect, I still think what they are doing is like with full intention, and it's because love is a beautiful thing. So
yeah, it's something that's not tangible and it's different to everybody else, but we do know that it exists because it makes people do some weird things.
I have never done a weird thing for love, Jake. You're like, maybe you all have. I have not. That's a lie. That's a lie.
So I'm interested then. You said that, maybe you don't believe in marriage so much, but you do marry people. Well, why is that? What keeps you coming to be the, what do you call it? There's a specific name for it that I have written down here. The modern celebrant.
The modern celebrant. Yeah. There's so many names. It's like celebrant, officiant, minister. And I don't like the word minister, but we'll roll with it anyways. Like I said, I think love is a really beautiful thing. The first wedding that I ever performed was in the middle of a desert. It was with this gay male couple from, where are they from? I think it was from France, and the other guy was from here, and he was like one of his husbands had passed away. Not one of his husbands. His previous husband had passed away, so he was a widowed man, and they had a son together. And I specifically remember like it was just the four of us, including the son, in the middle of the desert out at the dry lake bed over by Boulder City. Sunset was happening. We had somebody playing the violin. It was really beautiful, like a bottle of champagne and donuts for them. And I remember them just kind of going about and telling me their love story. And then the gentleman that would now be the stepfather of the son had come over, and he asked if I would, interject for a moment and allow him to kind of like have a vow for the son. I remember he got down on one knee and he kind of he expressed the fact and said, I will always be here for you. I'll always care for you, and additional verbiage, but that was the gist of it. And I'm sitting over there bawling, and I'm like, you can't be the one crying. It's someone else's wedding. God damn it. I'm like, you can't do this. You're like a hopeless romantic, picking my tears up off the floor. I'm like, okay, suck it up today. You're gonna be all right. You got this. So I walk over pretending that I wasn't just happy tearsing in the corner. And I think that was the moment, that my first wedding ever, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And again, I think love is a really unique and beautiful thing, and how people decide to express that is on their own accord, and there's not a right or a wrong. And I think that's another thing that we're all experiencing lately, is that we can agree to disagree on things, especially with the world climate as it is now, with everything going on. It's okay to not have the same viewpoint and perspective as everyone around you. And the common thread of that is being able to hold two things and like live in a form of duality where you can hold multiple things and say, I agree with you, but I also have this different stance on it. So it's not black or white. There's this awesome gray area that people can exist in that I think we forget actually exists, that you can believe in multiple things. And so just because I don't believe in marriage for myself doesn't mean that someone else doesn't. And everyone has different intentions for it too. Some people it is a financial thing and it makes more sense for them. Some people just like the tradition of marriage. And sometimes even if you take the tradition out of it with the legally binding aspect, marriage at surface level is essentially just expressing your love for someone and having a really awesome moment to share that and have people that love you most witness it if you have anyone there. And most oftentimes the weddings that I have, it's just the couple. So it's a very intimate moment with me and them, and that's it.
explains the waterfall of tears.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. I'm like, there's no Aunt Bertha can see me crying over here in the corner. We're gonna be okay.
That was an interesting perspective, because from the few weddings that I've been to, you see it more as like a display of affection that they're showing to all of their friends. But to you, it's more minimal. Is there a limit to how many people can attend?
So typically, I try to keep my weddings really small. So an elopement is typically just the two people. So it's the groom and groom, bride and groom, wife and wife. So if that's the case, then it's just myself, them, and then one witness, which the photographer usually seconds as a witness. So you don't have to have one of those either. So the smaller, the better. I love it because it really is intimate. You can kind of do your own thing. Within these weddings, there's so much restriction on a wedding day, and that's why there's so much stress. And this takes away all of that stress that you have put on you, and you can do so many things. So if the couple shows up and they're like, hey, we want to drive 10 more minutes down the road and do this, is that okay? Like, hell yeah, it's your day. Let's go do it. As opposed to if you have 20 people following behind you in cars or in a party bus, you can't really do that. You can't just pick up and leave and go do whatever you want. And I think people are just so much more like organic and genuine with themselves when it's not a performance. Because as much as weddings like aren't a performance and it should be natural, it's nerve-wracking. It's just like anything. It's just getting on stage and performing, public speaking. You're still there presenting yourself in a way that isn't normal. You standing up there saying vows, holding each other's hands and pouring sand into a glass container is like not a normal everyday thing. So this really allows that to be a completely different and diverse experience. The most people I've ever had at a wedding is about 50. And not saying that that's normally the number I go for. I typically offer weddings that are about 20 attendees or less. So up to 20 people, and we still do the donuts, the champagne, the whole thing. I absolutely make my couples spray champagne. So if they don't want to, I bring 2 bottles. I bring a cheap bottle so I can spray it all over the place and get wild, and then a good one for them to drink. Because I'm like, this is a part of it. I am forcing you to do it.
That's the inner Vegas girl in you.
Yeah. I'm like, but do not shoot that cork anywhere near me or at someone else's eye, because we are not getting a lawsuit on this. Do not do that. But yeah, the less crowd, the better. And obviously there's so many people that typically I find that if they are coming and they do have any of their family members or friends with them, it's typically their best friends, their closest family members, and that's who they invite. So maybe it'll be, 10 people tops. But it really, even then, it's a super intimate and it feels normal. It just feels like you're with the people that you love most and you're not up on a podium and like walking down the aisle and doing all of the stuff. It's very non-traditional in an awesome way, like traditionally untraditional. I think that's a really good way to put it.
It's a great way to put it. And they're breaking out of the traditional mold of that, as we spoke to earlier.
Which I think is, especially with the COVID stuff happening, we've all had to pivot our mentality, and like not only as businesses and like how we operate business and how we go about it or what we want to do with our lives when all of our jobs aren't there anymore. And we're like, oh, now is a really good time to dive into other things that we want to do. Like you with the podcast stuff and then me going to other things and like really honing into that wedding stuff. Oh, that's what I was saying. So, sorry for the pause, everyone. But even like the non-traditional aspect of it, like eloping is not a traditional thing. And it's really forced people, even in the wedding industry, as a job, but also the people that are getting married, it's forced them to come up with non-traditional ways to do that. So in whatever avenue you're taking, whether you're the client that is getting married or whether you're the person operating the business, you're having to come up with these unconventional ways to operate business, which I think is a super beautiful thing, because this has really encouraged and forced people to experiment in ways with their businesses and activity, how they go about life, to really grab onto things. And hopefully they've implemented new things in their business techniques that they can use later on. That this has really forced them to decide to do something differently. But even after COVID, giving it a nickname now, that even like it encourages them to continue doing that. Like maybe they found a new way to operate, and as they keep saying, maybe we didn't need to go back to normal, or there's a new normal, because we just get so in a routine of things that we forget that we can break out of that mold and that barrier. So that's the amazing thing with the wedding stuff. Even Last weekend, I worked with my photographer, Dan Bushkin, who's freaking incredible. And he gave away 2 free weddings for Pride Month. And so we often do that. Like if there's anything going on, I always participate in any free wedding that I can. But all of these weddings had been completely altered because of the pandemic that happened. So it's really getting to learn about how people are transitioning and like how people are coping with, the biggest day of their lives being completely shattered because of everything going on. And they're like, well, fuck, now I have to go and find a new way to do this. So even finding a way to be a part of that and help them in any way that we can was also a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, we're literally in the middle of called the giant reset.
I like that. I like it.
We hit the reset on the iPhone. We're wiping everything. We're starting all over because there's so many traditional methods that aren't needed anymore.
Yeah.
And just going back a little bit when we were talking on traditional weddings too, I think a big part of why people are almost acting is because they have to put literally their life savings into it. And when you have something that's so much smaller, it's more freeing because you're not going to be poor right after this. All for a little act and a few pictures. And I'm not knocking on traditional weddings. I love the traditional weddings that I've gone to.
All your friends are like, how dare I? Don't ever invite Jake to our wedding.
I know. I'm going to 3 later series. So I have to give the disclosure in there. Barring the COVID, but it's, just thinking of all of these like subconscious acts that go into traditional weddings are often overlooked because of all the things that go on behind the curtains, the different like run throughs of the weddings, all the different planning and text groups, and having the same wedding dresses for all the bridesmaids, and going on a bachelor party, and all these other things that are pretty much irrelevant to just the grand display of love towards everyone, when it's in the end of the day, it's just you and your partner. And so when you can scale that down and then create a unique style to whoever is being married, I think that it brings those intimate feelings out there out in the open.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I love it. And you were also touching, like you said, people spend all of their life savings on weddings sometimes, which is a hefty amount. We live in the wedding capital of the world, which by default, we have all of these beautiful casinos that people can go and spend $500,000 on a wedding. And I've actually seen that happen before, and that is wild to me. So the weddings that I do too, I make sure that, it's budgetable for sure for the couple, and it doesn't break the bank at all, but it still allows them to have that ceremony and that same intimate experience with one another or whomever they do want to bring along. Even the Do Drive-Thru that I am a part of, the Australian company, that one, the basic package, the only package is $400. And that includes going to the location, getting in the car, having the ceremony. I do all the paperwork, deliver it. You have a witness. And that is typically it. They range anywhere from $400 to $1,000. And like you said, in the grand scheme of things, especially in Vegas, where oftentimes people are spending upwards to $10,000, $20,000, maybe even $30,000 on a wedding, where your wedding cake alone is the cost of this entire wedding, then you're really measuring back, and it makes people reconsider and reevaluate again what is really important. Is it this massive celebration of things that lead up to this? Is it the expensive cake? Is it having a beautiful venue? Like, what exactly is that? To me, the most beautiful venue is outdoors. So I might be a little biased, but, so it really makes people reevaluate that and scale back and realize that at the basis of it, that is the most important thing. And you can still have all of those things in a big wedding encapsulates without having to actually do that.
I wonder, this is obviously going to have to be a longitudinal study that I'm about to say, but I wonder if these small elopements will end up in a lower divorce rate, because I'm sure a lot of fights, you have this big expectation, you spent all this money, and everyone has witnessed this display of love. And so you feel pressured to stay into it because of all of peer pressure. But if it's just 2 people and, they're doing it for themselves, not really anyone, they're not spending that much money, it would make me believe that they'd probably stay together more, because there's less things to argue about and less pressure surrounding them.
I've never even thought about that, and I really like it. So I'm going to touch base with all my couples in 20 years and be like, hey, this podcast that I did with Jake, we were just wondering, and I see, are you guys still together? Did eloping with just the two of you make you stay together longer? Because we're taking Italian, I need to figure this one out.
Yeah, I'll create a scientific study for the waiver next time that they get into it.
I'll add it into my contract in the release form. I'll say, by the way, I need you to let me know in writing in a couple of years how this is going for you.
You're going to be put into a database. We're going to call you from a random number in a year, and all you have to do is just say yes or no.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, it's so funny that not funny, it's amazing that you touched on that, because I've really never even considered it that way. And I do think that it puts a pressure on you. It's just like if you have kids, a lot of people stay in a marriage because they are afraid of having, I love we're on like the topic of marriage, and you're like, and divorce. But it really, sometimes it puts pressure on people to stay together or do certain things because they don't want other people to perceive them differently, which I think is not the best way to go, because I also think that like sometimes divorce can be just as loving as getting married. You know, instead of staying in this relationship that is not necessarily toxic, but maybe both of you need to spread your wings and go experience something else, then that's also a different route to take. So I do think it takes the societal pressure and the family pressure off even more so.
Yeah, I think the majority of us have all been in a family where you're like, you guys should have just got divorced a long time ago regarding our parents, because I know quite a few friends too who felt the same way.
Yeah.
And also too, I do want to note that working at a nightclub in Vegas, I have seen quite a few divorce parties.
Yeah. Well, you've also seen a lot of bachelor parties where you're like, you freaking should not even be getting married ever. And they're like, but I'm here. And I'm like, yeah, you also just made out with 16 people, and your groomsmen are not helping your situation whatsoever. I'm like, your wife would be very, very upset.
The groomsmen are the biggest instigators. And
God, they're the worst.
It usually ends up with the bachelor like shit-faced drunk before it's even midnight.
Yeah, which is so like the polar opposite of bachelorette parties. Okay, well, yeah, we'll just fully encompass everything, like bachelorette parties, weddings, and divorce. But even like with women, the most lengths they go to, they're like, here's an adorable scavenger hunt, wear this big penis crown on your head. And then dudes are like, I'm literally going to inject you with vodka, and we're going to do all sorts of dumb shit tonight. And like, hopefully your wife never finds out. I'm like, no, it's completely opposite. Like, I'm not saying women are innocent. My breed is definitely not. But I would say that bachelor parties go to a completely different extreme most of the time.
Mm-hmm. It usually involves like some sort of strippers coming back to the hotel room. You know, I've even heard quite a few midget strippers coming in there. They're just trying to go very exotic and exuberant into whatever they can get their hands on at the time.
I'd rather go to that. I'd rather go to that party and be like, screw the bachelorette party. I'm going to go to the stripper thing, hanging out with all the bachelors.
Interesting. Well, maybe not to put on a down note, but maybe the divorce elopement or delopement will have to be
delopement. Maybe it'll be a thing just to add on to my website. I can get you married, but if you ever need anyone to help you partake in the divorce festivities, we can also do that.
Also at a cheaper rate than what got you married.
Yeah, of course.
I like that. So earlier too, you were touching on the Australian company that you're working with, which we didn't give a proper explanation. So can we just touch a little bit on how you have pivoted during the COVID pandemic and partnering with an Australian company?
Yeah, for sure. So myself as the Lady Love Bandit and the Love Bandits Elopement Collective, during the pandemic, like I said, the wedding industry was a very hard hit one, and just like every other industry, but even more so because these people had their vendors and had everything booked for years out. A year and a half ago, they planned it, and then this happened, and they're like, what the hell is actually going on? And like you said, they had to pivot everything entirely and with business models. So most of my weddings got canceled, not necessarily canceled, but rescheduled for later on, which I think is an amazing thing. You know, just letting anyone know that might potentially be getting married and your wedding was canceled, just reschedule. Vendors are typically really excited to do that for you, especially with everything going on. So instead of canceling, like, work with them, and really they'll work with you on getting everything resituated, and more than happily do so. So when I initially got into it, all of the weddings stopped, came to an abrupt halt. Even elopements. I mean, for 2 months straight, the marriage license bureau was completely shut down. You couldn't go in. The only reason that you were able to get a marriage license was if you absolutely needed it. So whether it be like for a visa or a green card, or if you were in the military, like that was it. And it wasn't a wedding. You went to the courthouse, you got it signed there, and they printed it for you. So for the longest time, I had reached out. I stumbled across I Do Drive-Thru on Instagram, and I said, this is freaking amazing. So the entire concept stemmed from, they actually were inspired by Las Vegas because we're one of the only places that has a drive-through wedding chapel, you know, with the freaking Elvis impersonator, and you can go to midnight to get your marriage license, which most places do not do that. So it's a very convenient city to potentially make some very life-changing decisions permanently. So ended up seeing them, and I said, what an awesome concept, where instead of, I mean, most of the chapels here, and that's the unfortunate thing, is most of the chapels here have this like kitschy, it looks like you walked in to your parents' like 90s house with like felt plants and really terrible feng shui, if you could even call it feng shui, because it's putrid. And I hate to say that, but most of the chapels here have that. Like, they haven't had any millennial walk in and be like, whoa, this place needs a facelift. They just like leave it that way, and it's terrible for all photos. So even with the drive-thrus, like a lot of the drive-thrus have, you know, it's kind of like an assembly line of people. My mom got married at a chapel, and they just assembly line you through there. They just like, one person goes in, you get out. The other person goes in, you get out. And there's nothing personal about it whatsoever. And it feels very just like routine. So with that, I reached out because the idea is that they call it I Do Drive-Thru, but it's really a drive-up wedding. So you get to choose, it's a choose your own adventure of weddings, which is amazing. So you say, this is where I want to go, obviously within limitations. Like, you can't go to some places because it's physically impossible. So the couple gets the car, we get the car, we being the officiant, myself, and the photographer, and we can meet them wherever they want. So we go, I say the vows, we do the ceremony. The ceremonies range from 3 to 7 minutes. So you can have a super short and sweet one where I say a couple of things, and then I like encourage and make them make out at the end of it. I'm like, you have to kiss your other human bride that you just married. I'm like, make out already, damn it. And then I make them spray the champagne, so it works. I'm like, but do not get it all over either of your faces. Like, conserve that because we have some pictures to take too. So that happens. It's a really beautiful thing, but it really allows people to go outside of the boundaries. So oftentimes you go places and you can't get out of the car because you have to have a permit or do all of these things. This, I mean, you could go to the top of a parking garage, again, within limitations, and we do the ceremony, you exchange vows, we do the rings, we do the paperwork, I go and drop it off the next day, and y'all are married. So when I saw that concept, I'm like, wow, we live in Las Vegas where all of these things already exist, but nothing like this. I mean, it does happen. I've done elopements in the middle of the desert, but the whole point of this stemmed around social distancing at its finest. So, you know, eloping was the original social distancing of weddings. So,
boom, heard it here first.
Heard it here first.
Trademark it.
Social distance forever and just elope. So that idea and concept, I'm like, wow, this could really take off here too. So having it be an Australian company, I reached out to them. Like, oh, they might not actually get back to us at all. Who knows? So they actually did, and they were super thrilled about it. Mel and Kate are the ladies in Australia that actually started I Do Drive-Thru. They're both celebrants there, which do phenomenal work. And that was the question they posed to me. They said, well, this entire like brainchild came from the ideas that already were implemented in Vegas with drive-thrus. They go, so why do you think it'll be different? And my idea of it was because of the fact that you don't have to pull up to an actual physical brick and mortar building, go through, do something, they say, and then you just drive off in the limo that they provided you with. This actually allows you all of the flexibility of that and the ease of it without having the frills of all of the elaborate things on a wedding day. But we get to go wherever you want, which is not something that, yeah, you can go to a drive-thru and that's always existed. But with this being said, I mean, when I was being interviewed the other day, or somebody asked me a question about it, and they said, well, so-and-so from this chapel said that she was the person, she's been doing it for 60 years. I said, well, she has been doing it for 60 years. She's absolutely right. And like, yes, we've all married someone in the middle of the desert or in really beautiful outdoor places. But the concept of this was that you meet them, and because of social distancing, you don't get out of your vehicle. So they stay in the vehicle. I stand outside of the vehicle and I marry them. So yes, they could get out of the vehicle, but the whole point of the drive up or / drive-through wedding was so that they did not have to do that.
Yeah, you're mobile and nobody else is.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Thank you.
And I think this company was probably built it waiting and hoping for one day somebody from Vegas would hit them up.
yeah,
And they're like, let me tell you, we have been waiting for this day for decades.
I love it. And it's like, and we're on such literally polar opposite schedules because we're on different ends of the world. So that's a thing. So like talking to them, it's 10 o'clock at night for me. It's 7 a.m. for them. And they're like, how are you doing today? I'm like, we need it. We're good. We're getting better at this time zone difference thing. So like really coordinating that. And they did an amazing job. They got a United States website set up for us. They just launched in New York last week. So they are now in New York as well. We have a gal out there who's doing amazing things too. So, and that is where we are right now.
There's so many different ways that you could take this. It's so cool. But go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, and that's what I told them. They said, do you think this is going to thrive even after social distancing is done and after COVID? I said, absolutely. Because again, it's really putting it in front of people's faces that a lot of people never knew about eloping. A lot of people never knew about any of these alternative ways of marriage. I said, so once people start seeing that and they realize that you can like elope and then also celebrate later with all of the people that you're going to invite to your massive ass wedding, it's an amazing thing because you get to share that. It's really intimate. And then I'm like, just go to your favorite dive bar afterwards and have open bar for all of the people that were going to attend your wedding and celebrate together because that's what you were going to do after the reception anyways. And then all of that money that you save on this big wedding that you ended up not doing, you can go travel and go do all of these other things.
It's the perfect combination for every millennial. It's two different things. It's you get to go be weird with your significant other, go travel and do all these like out there ideas, and you get to keep personal, and then you get to go throw a party, which is something that everyone loves to do. And
I hate partying, Jake.
And you could theme it too, because I know that's always a big thing of theming it, and I think that's just a perfect combination.
Yeah, it's amazing, and that's why I love it.
So when you go out and even before I do drive-throughs, what are some of the locations that you can take these out to, if you're allowed to reveal them, or maybe they're secretive?
No, I can definitely talk about it. So a lot of the dry lake bed is one of the most famous locations here that's outside. And I mean, you'll see that in a ton of photographers that are local and amazing work. A lot of the other officiants in town have also always done it there. So that's one of the locations. Obviously anywhere at Red Rock, there are a lot of places that you have to have permits. But again, this kind of allows you to go into the park and have opportunities. We still have to retrieve a permit, but there's sometimes, because you're not getting out of the vehicle, places that you can go because you don't have to hike to it, which allows you to have that flexibility. I mean, you can go over, and if you wanted to do the overlook over the Hoover Dam, or do something downtown in front of one of the murals, or drive out a little bit further, you could go. One of my favorites, that if anybody wants to get married there, just letting you know, I have 2 of them and I would love for it. There's that big ass PBR can when you're headed into Utah on the side of the road on the left-hand side by the old abandoned train. I need somebody to get married in front of that. And at the Wheel of Misfortune by Lake Las Vegas. So if anybody wants to get hitched at either of those 2 places, I am down.
The Wheel of Misfortune is dope. I see I see a lot of people taking pictures there.
Yeah, I was there the other day. There's definitely like a homeless enclave there and an entire camp, and they have like signs and a street sign. It's awesome. But like, just know that we will be experiencing that. There's a lot of garbage and spray cans everywhere. But as long as you come equipped with hiking boots, I think we'll be okay.
Has anyone asked about taking pictures at the Las Vegas sign, or getting hitched over there?
No one actually has yet, which would have been the perfect opportunity when no one was there and it was an apocalypse and the entire show was closed down. And now that life is semi getting back to normal, I think it's going to be a little harder to do stuff on the strip, but I'm still totally down. Our ceremonies are really short, so we could do a 3 to 5 minute ceremony and everyone else there could just wait.
I think also too, being a nomad like you are, and how you've gone through all these different scenic territories, does that help you pick out these specific locations?
I think it definitely does, and I have a couple up my sleeve that I won't reveal, but I do have some other really cool ones. And when I was living in Colorado for a bit, they're a self-solemnizing state, so you actually don't need an officiant, which I didn't know before I moved to Colorado and tried to be an officiant, that you could marry yourself and you don't actually need me. So that's a really hard job to have in Colorado because no one actually needs your presence there. But I do think that when I was living in Colorado, there was a lot of places that were outside of the more familiar ones. And obviously there's a lot more mountainous areas there, places that you can go. But I do believe that my adventurous spirit and my nomadic spirit is definitely encourage and push the limitations that a lot of people don't necessarily have in the wedding industry. And I do really like that. Like, yes, I'm totally willing to go, downtown and you shotgun a PBR after you get married. But I'm also like very, very cool with hiking for 10 miles if that's really what you want to do and getting married on top of a mountain. So either of those are completely again, you can hold two things. So it allows me the diversity and the ability to have these adventurous couples that want to do these outdoorsy things. And then also just like my badass couples that want to do really cool shit around town. But I have the ability to do both of that.
Well, if I ever get married, I'm going to tell you that we're taking a 20-minute trek somewhere.
Perfect.
We're diving in there. I really like this idea, and I'm curious on to see how far and it expands. Do you have any sort of idea in the future of how this company will look? I don't
necessarily. I do hope it becomes more prevalent and is witnessed by more people to see that there are alternative ways to getting married. I do think even in the past couple of years, eloping has become a much more popular thing. And again, with access to it on the internet and seeing all these pictures of brides in beautiful places and doing all these crazy things, it's put it within arm's reach of people to understand that it is a tangible thing and that they can also do that for themselves. Where I think when we talk about that breaking of tradition again, nobody ever used to have that. Again, you couldn't just go on the internet and see all of these really beautiful places or ideas and concepts that people were introducing to an industry that's been around for so long. And it's really allowed people to find the beauty and the magic in that. So I do think that it's going to exist well after this. People are going to continue getting married for forever.
And divorced.
Forever. Married, divorced, yes. So with that being said, I don't think there won't be a decline. That's for sure. I am curious to see with the I Do Drive-Thru concept of, having it stay the way that it is because I think there's something so fun about the idea of like driving somewhere, staying in a car and not having to get out. That to me is so fun. And that's what I'm really hoping. The weddings won't stop, but I hope that concept itself, even post social distancing and outside of having to not have gatherings of people at weddings, that itself still remains, because that's the beauty and the magic of what those girls have created is like that niche thing. And that's what no one else is doing. So that's why it's awesome.
Yeah. If you see just the common patterns that are trending within society, you see mobility is something, just the innovation with technology, convenience, like everyone is Postmating nowadays. No one goes out to restaurants. I had a guest on here who's creating a company that's ghost restaurants and virtual kitchens because his company's lost so much business because everyone fucking does is just order nowadays. He said he has more carts outside picking up food than they do like actual
in the restaurant.
People in the restaurant. So you see that's a trend. People are going to be working from home, and people just want to feel comfy within something that's within themselves. And when you go out and get married at a traditional wedding, people are out of their element. Because they're always at home for so long. So if you could stay in your car that's yours and drive, then it's your own setting. You're comfortable with it. Yeah,
exactly. Or not even if it is your own car. I mean, you have a friend that has his car rental thing too, and I always encourage people. I'm like, go get that bitchin', old vintage classic car that you've always wanted to get married in, because it's going to be in your photos anyways. And my photographer does an awesome job of capturing the entire day. Haley is the videographer. Sean Jorgensen is my photographer, and that is our, I would say dynamic duo, but dynamic trio of all of us. And then I also have my girlfriend Callie that does all the flowers for us. So between that, the four of us are the Love Bandits Elopement Collective. So that's a thing is I wanted to have another thing too that you always see is people are just scrambling to find vendors. In a traditional wedding, you have to go in there. I need to have the venue ready for it. I need to get the floral, the cake, the catering, all of these things. when I wanted to really bring something else into Vegas where it's a one-stop shop for people to be able to get married. So they come to me and they say, hey, this is exactly what I want. They know the style because Sean's photography is all that I use for that specifically. And I do have other photographers that I work with, but in that package deal, they already know what they're getting. They've seen Sean's photos. They know what to expect. They've seen Haley's videos. They know what to expect. And they come to me and say, hey, I want to get married. And within that package comes all of those things. So you have the officiating done by me, the filing of the paperwork, the floral, so the boutonniere and the bouquet, or the bouquet and the bouquet, an hour of photography and the videography, which is something that there are a few people doing. But I do think the ease of that is something that normal weddings do not have. Like, it's typically very stressful. I mean, even when we were in the sorority or with the fraternity and formal planning, whomever was in charge of that, I just remember having to do catering and finding the venue and doing all these things. Oh my God, it was amazing, but it was also very stressful. And then of course the buses, because they're like, God forbid anybody drink. None of you are driving afterwards. I'm like, okay, 15 cat buses it is then to transport all of these drunk asses from one place to another. All of you were great drunk asses, but it was a thing. So, I mean, even just like any event planning in general, and I think going back to that too, being in the sorority and like having all of these things where I had to do that and I had to find vendors really encouraged me to not do that. Like I didn't want to be a wedding planner. I didn't want to be that person that was sitting there doing trying to find these 15 different things. And also having the bride stress out still about her day because we're still trying to coordinate and like get times right and make sure shit is dropped off at the right time. Like this, I pick up the flowers, I bring them to you, photographer meets us there, and it's so seamless and painless that it makes everything much more comfortable for everyone involved.
The stress. Like I said, I haven't gone through a wedding, but just the stories that I hear from literally every bride and groom is how stressful it is. So it's cool to see. I did have this random idea while you were talking, was taking the Love Bandits, because you're a big desert person. Mm-hmm. If you could take this to like Burning Man and get someone married over there.
Yeah, well, and that's what I was thinking about. Obviously, RIP Burning Man for the year, but we'll be coming back full force next year. So this year, what I actually planned on, what I wanted to do, that you mentioned that, I had reached out. So like when you go to Burning Man, I applied for the low income ticket, which is a really awesome way, because when I was teaching, you submit your tax forms and do all these things. And they're like, what do you want to bring to the play? Like, what is your contribution to that? And obviously, like, I think the energy and everyone being there is a contribution all on its own. But me having the ability and being in Nevada, having it hosted there, I am legally able to marry people. So what I wanted to do was actually marry people at Burning Man, do 10 weddings for people, and all they have to do is bring me the paperwork, and then I file it and we're good to go. So that was something that I definitely would love to do next year.
That'd be so cool.
Burning Man's canceled.
Never been. I tried a few times, but next year has been my eye on the prize. I've been trying to go for so long. I've heard so many crazy stories.
You can go with me.
Yes, 100%. Sign me up.
Come on.
I'm in. I've been trying to go for so freaking long.
Yeah.
You could get people married on their, I know the bike, what's it? Yeah. The little like cruiser bikes are like a popular thing out there.
Yeah. Well, and I think Burning Man, even if you're going to talk about non-conventional anything, like Burning Man is the best place for all of that to happen. And I think even there, it's just like the people that are getting married at Burning Man are really doing it because they have this genuine connection to one another. Like you're getting married in the middle of the desert. And I think the people that do that there's something really, I've been to a couple weddings on the playa, and there's nothing that beats those weddings. Like, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the energy. Maybe it's like being at an event like that and a gathering where it really does feel like home, where that these people could have been anywhere else in the world, but they decided to do it there. Like, so that it's a really special, special feeling. I mean, just being at Burning Man in general is a really special feeling, but the love, and maybe it's just because everyone's so free and the love is just like overflowing there regardless.
How many times have you been to Burning Man?
This 2 years. So this coming year would have been the third, but I intend to, as long as the world allows me and my health always allows me, I hope to go for the rest of my life.
This is every single person I know that goes is a regular there. They've been there 4 or 5 times in a row, and I know that the average age of Burning Man is like one of the oldest. You see people out there in their 50s, 60s, even 70s. Just
and it's so amazing.
Spirit.
It's just like such a free spirit, so vibrant, so youthful, and I think the most amazing thing there is that just everyone is so stripped of their labels, and that's something that you don't see often. Like you have such this melting pot of humans that there's like CEOs of companies there with millions of dollars, and there's people, like me that applied for a low income ticket at one point, and it's the fact that nobody really recognizes that, and that's what's amazing. Like you would never know unless they brought it up in conversation, because it's like one entity, like you are all one person at that one point. Like obviously individuals at the same time, but everyone is sharing like a common thread. And it's that one event that's bringing you together. And I think that's a really beautiful thing too. Through
your experiences there, what do you think is the biggest misunderstanding about Burning Man?
I would think that, oftentimes the most common thing that you hear is, oh, it's a bartering system. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. And it's not a bartering system. I mean, anything that you receive is by free will and accord of the other person. So it's not a bartering system. You don't have to go ask to do anything. So I think that's probably one of the common misconceptions about it too. And obviously then there's like this huge idea that it's just like one big fucking orgy. And I'm like, the orgy dome is a great place, but it is like one small speck and grain of what the phenomenal aspect of it really is. And yes, it's very free, and like it's even amazing to me, like when people bring their kids, I think it's really important to express that to them at a young age. Like I personally would not want to take my child because it's like a week for me to just not have to care about anything. Like I leave the default world for a little bit and can escape into like an alternate reality for a little bit. And I think that's an amazing thing. But the people that do bring their kids, I think it's awesome because they're exposing them to something and making it feel natural. Like nudity is natural. Like that's not a crazy thing to think about. Or, obviously there's other things happening there that kids probably, it's fine. But I think it's just like really authentic, genuine, and everyone there is just, they have no ill intentions, and everyone is there. They're so like-minded, or otherwise they wouldn't wait 8 hours in a car to go sit in the desert with 80,000 other people for 7 days straight. So everyone is there like with an intention for something. And even if you don't come with an intention, I think you definitely leave learning a lot about yourself and who you are as a person and like what brought you there. And a lot of times like you'll go and you have no idea what it is, and we always have those moments where like the temple is always a really beautiful place for a lot of people, and you'll go and you'll sit there and you can read everything. And I think it allows you to really let your guard down. And there would be times where I would just be like riding back to camp by myself, and I would just sit down at sunset. Sunset is my favorite part of all of Burning Man. So are sunrises. But sunset has this just like, I don't know, there's something about it where like the lights start coming on and it's just completely different energy. And I just would go and sit in the middle of the playa and like exist. And I would just like cry, like just tears rolling down my face, happy tears. But it's just a moment of like, one, how awesome and like what did I do right in life to be able to have this moment around all of these amazing people. But it really allows you to do some like introspective work on yourself and really get to grasp that. I think so often at like music festivals, there's so much hustle and bustle. You're like, okay, I'm ready to go see this artist. We're going here, and you have it like laid out, and your plan is like to a T what you're doing, which is fucking rad because you want to see who you want to see. But this takes away, like, it strips you of all of that even. Like, yeah, there's music, but it's not a festival, and that's not what it's there for. And like the only way to get a hold of people, you have like, I would go to camps and write on a notebook and like leave it in their tent. I'm like, hey, I might be at like 9:30 Esplanade later if you want to come to skate camp. Just like whatever it is, and you see if they show up, and if they don't, they don't. Then you know that they never got your message.
Yeah, it sounds like you're stripped of like the technology, and the humans are set down to almost like your primitive being. And back before phones and technology and communication. So you guys are sending carrier pigeons so that you can
carrier pigeons, smoke signals. You're like, hey, don't mind me. And I think that's like such a beautiful thing too, is that like with that comes like the intimacy of of spoken word and being able to actually talk to people and feel that. And so oftentimes like eye contact and conversation are, it gets harder and harder for people, I think, because this technology is so ingrained in who we are now, especially generations after us, that it takes away like the ability to know what people are doing all of the time. And also that feeling that you get when you're like, oh God, like I really wish I was doing that. Like you don't have that because it doesn't exist there.
Yeah.
And I think it's such an awesome feeling that like returning to default world, you kind of just want to throw your phone in the lake on the way out and just like go get a pager again. You're like, just page me and let me know that you want me to call you in the next week.
Yeah, have you ever broken your phone and then there's been this little period of maybe like a week where you're without a phone, and the first day you kind of have high anxiety because you're like, oh my God, I can't communicate with people. You open up your laptop and you go on Twitter 400 times and Instagram.
Yeah.
And then after a day, you're just like, wow, this is
exhilarating.
This is nice. Yeah, I feel like I am living again. And so
I love it.
There was a point in college where I was pretty reckless and I had broken my phone. I'd broken my phone probably 6 or 7 times within the matter of like 2 years. So there was times where I went like 3 weeks in college without a phone, and I was like, I don't even want to I don't even want a phone at this point anymore. I enjoy being my free self. And like you're saying, when you have those intimate moments on the playa where you just sit there and you just coalesce yourself and you have these introspective thoughts of realizing who you are and maybe the people that mean the most to you. And that's kind of the same similarities as to when you get separated from technology nowadays, because it's so ingrained into our minds nowadays.
Yeah.
And like most of the time people just take their phone out, and you ever have this experience, you take your phone out, you look at it, put it back in,
and then pull it right back out.
And then pull it back right out, and you're like, what the fuck did I do? Like you went to look at the time.
Well, and it's even one of those things, it's like if you ever go, like I make it a point for myself too. It's like whenever I go to dinner with someone, or if I am if I'm doing something with anyone, like I make it a point to make sure that I don't, like if my phone is on my person or somewhere around me, like I make it a point to not pull it out. Unless if someone calls, I can answer and say, hey, I'll get a hold of you later. But I really try to like devote my undivided attention to that person. Because again, it's so hard to have that. Like oftentimes, like you'll be at a bar with a friend and you'll go to the restroom and you'll come back and they're on their phone, because being alone makes people really fucking uncomfortable. We've all been there. Like I've been that person too. So it's just human nature at this point where they don't know what else to do. So someone leaves but they're by themselves, and instead of being alone in their thoughts or just existing and breathing and just, I don't know, looking at the things around them, they're preoccupied and they have to be distracted. Like our minds constantly have to be distracted from what we're always doing. That like you were saying, this has been a hard reset for people. And I think even during COVID, it's really forced people to become comfortable with themselves, especially when you can't go out to a club, or like you can't go to that event, or you can't go to a bar with your friends and hang out with all 10 of them at the same time. It's forced people to be okay with themselves and like embrace the solitude, which is something that even with like my Desert Nomad brand, when I did 2 months, what was it, 2 years ago? Last year? It was, I have no idea when it was. I think it was 2 years ago. But I did a month in Europe and a month in Thailand by myself. And again, like embrace the solitude is something that I absolutely love. And I hope that like this time has really encouraged other people to do that too, because we all need that hard reset. And sitting alone with our own thoughts is like the hardest thing in the world, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, whenever I sit and talk with my uncle or my dad about how they used to, sit in the bar in the 80s and the 70s, and I'm like, what did you guys do without a phone? And they're just like, we just sat and just everyone kind of just stared at each other while you drank. Because there was no opt-out policy. Like with the phone, you ever see like when people are like they're walking across the street and they're taking too long, they'll pull their phone out and they'll just look at it for like a second. So it's just like I'm not gonna fucking look at you or talk to you, and I'm just gonna pretend to look at my phone.
Yeah. Or like if you're like on the side of the freeway and there's a homeless person next to you and you're like, I don't have any cash, but I don't want to make eye contact because I'm gonna feel guilty. So you just look down the whole time and they're like, they see you, they know you're not. Like, but I'm like, I don't have any cash on me, so I feel guilty if I make eye contact with you, and then I have to worth you. I'm like, I don't have any. So. No, I think that's really great. And I think it is awesome talking to people. We're like totally off tangent and I love it. But I think it's even talking to older generations like our grandparents and our parents and really seeing how they existed. And it was the weirdest thing. I went to my grandpa's like fucking like 60th high school reunion. I don't know. There's only like 4 of them left, so it was really small. We were in Mangus, Colorado, and they were like, okay, so my grandma and grandpa took me. And again, it's one of those things too, you walk in the house and there's like 900 antiques all over the place because that's what they've collected forever. She's like, that's the original malt machine from the P&D down the road. I'm like, from when? And it still works. But even one of the things too, again, I make it an intention for myself that I really try to pay attention what is going on around me at that time. Even when I'm alone, like I try to not be on my phone. Like I'll take a book, or even if I just need to sit there in silence by myself, then I force myself to do that so that I don't become accustomed to doing the opposite. But when I was at the 60th high school reunion, I was like the youngest person there
by 60 years.
By 60 years. And their friends had come and commented to them and commented and said, I think it's really neat that she didn't have her phone out the entire time. Like all of our grandkids like constantly have their phones on. They're always playing games or doing something and blah, blah, blah. And I just think that to me made me feel really good that if we all take a step back and just really soak in all of those moments that are happening, it's the same. Like when you're at a music festival, like most of the time you're not on your phone. Like I love, one of my favorite fucking things is comedy clubs and music events where they make you put your phone away. It makes me so happy. Like this weird little magnetic box or the magnet things where they're like, we're going to put your phone in here. Don't be a dick. Turn it on silent. And if you need to step out, you can like leave the event and get your phone out and go. And I think it's so important. I'm like, you don't need to record the entire thing. I think so often we're so caught up in capturing the moment that we're not capturing the memory. Like you're capturing it on film and you're doing that, but you're not capturing it for yourself, which is the most important part. Like that's what you're going to hold on to.
Make intimacy great again.
It is. Make intimacy great again. Yes. I'm going to get a hat made, please. I'm getting one made for you. I'm going to get a matching one.
Let's do it.
Happy early Christmas present. If anybody wants them, just let us know. We'll get you one made too.
Yeah, we're going to start it right underneath the Desert Nomad Hat Co.
Oh God, yeah. Please.
It'll be a side segment.
I don't necessarily want there to be any confusion that I support anything that might resemble that, but we will we'll make it look a little different for you guys. Don't worry.
Well, what kind of hats do you make typically?
So the hats that I make are actually like beaver felt cowboy hats, so like Western style hats. And I hate to say cowboy, but it's the only way that people can like relate to the material that I use. So unfortunately, it is beaver felt. So in Asia, where we get them sent from, Winchester Hat Co., which is here locally, they're the ones that actually make the bodies. So they from start to finish, it's completely done by me. Like I steam the hat, I block the hat, I sew in the sweatband, I crease the hat, and it gets put in a box and sent to whomever is buying it. So from start to finish, like I hand make the entire thing. And in Asia, there's like this relative of the beaver that is like they're overpopulated with them, and it's also considered a delicacy. Like they eat it like we eat cow. So before all of you fucking freak out and think that I'm over here killing beavers, that's not the case. So instead of, it's the same as like a Native American culture where when you eat something, you use the entire body.
It's like a sign of respect.
Exactly. Like you use the bone for broth and you use the pelt, you do everything. So over there, they actually eat this animal, and instead of just what's what I'm looking for?
Just letting it decompose on the ground.
Not decomposing, but discard of it. Jeez. I like the other D word. So instead of just discarding of it and not doing anything, they consume the meat and then they use the fur and send it over to us, and we compact it and make it really like a fiber essentially. And that is used to make the hats. So we use beaver and rabbit, but yeah.
I didn't even know that was possible.
It is. It's a real thing. But yeah, it's like whenever you get those hard brimmed cowboy hats, it's like super, super rigid. That's the material that we use. That I use. I use we for myself. Like we do that all the time. No, it's I.
It's you and your brand. By the law of the U.S. government, a business is classified as a person. So
perfect.
It is we. You and the Desert Nomad Hat Co. and Mercantile. Now it's 3.
That's 3. I love it.
Why beaver? Is there something about the I'm gonna say material, but like the leather, I guess.
It's not the actual pelt. So the pelt itself would be like the skin of the animal. So it's not the skin. It's only the hair. So that's like shaved off and compacted. So beaver has this kind of like weather resistant material that comes along with it, which is really neat. So that way you can wear it in the elements and it's not going to, disintegrate on top of your head. So it allows it to keep its like structure and composure, if you will, while also being able to wear it in like the snow, the rain, and anything like that too.
Well, you're gonna have some angry beavers.
I like that show.
I know. I had to throw it in there.
Someone's gonna make a beaver joke out of this too, but we'll let them do that inappropriately off air.
I was thinking about it for like a few minutes. I was like, where do I insert this joke? this dad joke.
I was waiting for it. You did real good on that one.
So, do you have any ideas in future expansion into this, or is this company kind of on hold while you're putting all of your passion into becoming a Love Bandit?
I think it's definitely, as the wedding stuff picks up, it's hard to really devote and dedicate time to both things because I love both of them equally. So I think the hats is definitely more of a side passion project as opposed to being like the main focal point of everything that I'm doing. But those two are the things that I want to do for the rest of my life, or as long as I can. Obviously, someone's not going to hire an 85-year-old wrinkly chick to be like, "Hey, can you come marry me?" They'll get the fresh meat, but it is something that just I am in love with it so much. I love marrying people, and I love creating and having the best of both. Having the ability. That's why I think we take for granted the simple things of just like one, being able to do what you love to do. That we have the ability to do so, and just like our able-bodiedness to do things. And I think people should take advantage of that more often. And I know that's like totally off tangent too, but I mean, even like the ability to create something that I can look at. And I think that's a really cool thing too, is when I hand the product to someone and they love it, or like I'll wear one of my hats and it goes, "Oh my gosh, I love that hat so much." There's something so gratifying and satisfying about being able to say, "I made that. So thank you. I appreciate that." Like there's something really, really rewarding about that.
Yeah, I am a true believer that if you put your passion into a project like your hats or getting people married, that'll show because that's your intent. Whereas if you go into a business with money coming first, with ideals, that will show, and it'll show all the corners that you're cutting in order to make and squeeze every last dollar out of that passion. Well, passionless project.
Passionless project.
Yeah. and so when you, like you said, you hand stitch all of your passions into it, and everyone loves every single cent of it. And the money will always follow later in life through passion, and people really do see that. Yeah,
and I think we've like anyone that you talk to normally, their story of their ladder of success always started with like, I went into it and I just kind of threw caution to the wind, took out a chunk of my savings, did what I love to do, and then it became successful. Like it typically doesn't go the other way. It's not like, I was successful and then it just came out of nowhere. So, I mean, there definitely are people that end up in situations and it's miraculous and it's amazing and they do with it what they will. But I think it really stems from creating it from a place of having heart and wanting to do that. And like you said, people also see that. Mm-hmm. They see when your passion is shown through that. And I think even when you talk about things, when you talk about it and you sound passionate, I think that makes people want to be a part of that. Or like if you have a product that you're selling or like a service that you're selling, when they can sense that energy off of you, I think that sells them more. Like there's so many officiants in the world and there's so many fucking hat companies in the world. And I think the thing is, if you can talk about that with them and they sense that, people are so more willing to use your service or buy your product because they experience that and feel it. So I think that's also really important. And that's in any realm. I mean, you could do basket weaving, and I'm a full, like I used to tell my kids all the time, like, I don't care what you do. And I'm like, you can be an auto mechanic if you want to. I said, but go into it with passion. I said, whatever you want to do. Again, you could be a basket weaver, but do it with a shit ton of passion and you'll be fine.
When you take that idea and you look at it in the larger scale, I'll use like tech companies, for example. Yeah. All of these companies that raise enormous amounts of money before there's even a project, ultimately always end up failing, but then the ones who end up succeeding are the companies who were built out of a garage. Apple, Facebook, Google, all these different ones, and Amazon. And so they didn't sell their soul in the beginning because that showed, and that's why they ultimately failed. Whereas these companies, they just built. They put all of their time, effort, sweat, maybe a few pennies that they had that wasn't dedicated toward their rent. And they end up succeeding. And nothing of sustainable success from a monetary gain, it comes in the beginning. It's always built after years and years and years and unraveling and passion. And so I think I think you will have a lot of success in the future.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. So we're at an hour 19.
Heck yeah.
That was solid. And I do want to say too, during that conversation, there's twice where you said that we're going off on tangents. There's no tangents here. It's all one conversation.
Come on, bring your tangents.
Just like we're a giant,
I love it.
just like we're a giant energy in the universe, we're all connected in some way. Every conversation can always be connected to each other.
That is true. I like it.
So I have 2 questions before we go. They're the same questions I asked everyone.
Okay.
So the year is 2030. What does the status of Love Bandits Co. and the Hat Co. look like?
That's a good one. I think I did like in my brain imagine when 2030 was 10 years, Berlynn, 10 years. We're almost there.
First, you have to imagine that the world's still here.
It's okay. Yeah, exactly. No, someone the other day was like, how old are you? I was like 25. Like, I am absolutely 27 years old. I have no idea what percent and extra additional personality I'm taking on, but I'm not 25 years old. So I definitely, I mean, in my mind, I would prefer it to be prosperous, not only, and not, the lucrative aspect of it is always something, you know, like you want to be able to put top ramen on your table at the end of the day. So like, that's super important. And like buy my PBRs, my cheap, shitty beer. But besides that, I think as long as something, even if it's a side project, like even if it's a side passion project that you have going on, I definitely see myself like staying in an avenue, with like event planning and what I'm doing right now with like the community management and event coordination, but having this really turn into something amazing. So like in my idea is that the Love Bandits Co. and myself as an officiant, what I'm hoping is eventually like the brand really creates itself and makes a standing impression on a lot of people. And eventually I'll just be able to have more people that are like-minded join my team. That would be the end goal, is that we get so busy with people that are like demanding that they have that kind of officiant or like that specific kind of ceremony to characterize what they're looking for in a wedding. So my goal is to just like, I would love to see that expand, you know, even if it's citywide, statewide, nationwide, just like the I Do Drive-Thru thing did. They started something during a pandemic that they didn't think was going to go, that they thought was going to stay right in Melbourne in Australia. And now they're in Las Vegas and New York and all of these places because of this just like awesome concept and idea that stemmed from, you know, you find beauty in a lot of places that you never would. And I think that's something that came from that. And my goal would be to do the same thing, is to really have it expand and grow and have people find beauty in like the alternative ways to do things. And so hopefully in 2030, that would be nice. That's what I would plan to be doing. And I really want a celebrity to be wearing my hat by 2030. Hopefully that's a thing. That would be great.
Make intimacy great again. We heard it.
You heard it here first, folks.
I'm gonna play this back in 10 years when someone's wearing it, or even probably beforehand. And last question is, what does Las Vegas mean to you?
Oh God. Ooh, this is a good one. We'll go a little longer on this one. So I think just being born and raised in Las Vegas, there's a lot of misconceptions that come with that. And it took me a really long time to really appreciate this city as an adult. When I was, how old was I? I think I was 22. I just like had a ton of these like internal conflicts with myself, and I was blaming it on the city. I was so upset and kind of like depressed sometimes. And I was like, it's fucking Las Vegas. It's doing this to me. Like, it's the city that's making me super unhappy. And it took me moving to Denver, Colorado to then like internally look into myself. And I'm like, no, you just have a lot of stuff going on in there. And it's like convoluting your brain, and you're just unable to find your own happiness. Like, you need to find that within yourself. It's not the location that's going to change any of that. So after I moved to Denver and I realized that Las Vegas was not the issue whatsoever, it was me as a person, and I needed to like really deal with that. I moved back here with a completely different appreciation for the place that I've called home forever. And like, I absolutely love it here. I think the culture that we have is amazing. I think the city itself is so unique in a sense that it's like the most convenient city ever. You can go do whatever you want 24/7 for the most part. We're so lucky and spoiled with like the outdoor stuff. And obviously I'm a big fan of the outdoors. So, you know, with having access within 30 minutes, you have a lake, a river, a mountain, and 4 different national parks that you can go to within driving distance. Like that is so, we're so stinking lucky. And I think more people are really starting to experience that. But yeah, I mean, Vegas is home, and Vegas is incredible. And it took me a really long time to be able to grasp that. And I'm a diehard that I will always have a home in Las Vegas. Like even if I move and I move somewhere else, I will hands down always have an actual physical home here.
Every single person that leaves Vegas that's born here always comes back. always. I
think that should be another hat that we make. It's like if you're born in Vegas, you will always come back. And I think we all experience that, where you leave and you're like, oh, okay, it really isn't that bad. And it's like it's so awesome here. And Vegas itself is super small for the people that actually reside here. And I think that's even more amazing. People are like, it's so big, and it's so, I'm like, well, most of the people take up the Strip, which are tourists, but I think it's a beautiful thing that you can also go and see people that you've known forever and randomly run into them. And our community is so tight knit and like intricately woven into one another. And I think that's also a really unique thing that we have here that so many people often like disregard.
It's like they say the phrase of 6 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. in Vegas, everyone's only 1 degree separated. It's so crazy. Everyone's like, oh, that, like, you want to talk to some person, they're like, oh, that's my best friend's sister or something like that. It's such a small, big town.
It is. I love it.
And I love it. How can everybody get connected with you?
If you wanted to, I have a couple of ways on social media that you can reach out. My hat company is Desert Nomad Hat Co. on Instagram. My 2 companies, well, 3, but my 2 personal ones are Lady Love Bandit, and then the other one is Love Bandits Elopement Co., which is actually stands for collective for the group of us, but that's what it is. And then the Do Drive-Thru is the company that I work side by side with in Australia, and that's also their idea and concept. And if you had any interest, you can always go on their website, send an inquiry to them, and I can get you married in a car.
Boom. Hopefully, somebody that's listening out here one of these days, even if they have to look back and they dive into this, and we could be the reason why.
Oh my God, I love it. It's amazing.
I love it. This was an amazing conversation. Once again, I thank you for showing up here and doing this interview.
Thank you, Jake.
We'll catch you guys next time.